Hey, Nation, Harry here. We are fitting in our around the horns with our analyst as we start to wrap up Q1 for 2020, and what a quarter it's been. This is a special podcast edition because of the exact topic we're going to talk about, which is bandwidth in a COVID-19 world and some of the technology challenges. So we're back with Frank Ohlhorst out of New York. How you doing, Frank? You hanging in there?
I'm hanging in there, Harry. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing the same. I worked out of my home office so long. It's on the one hand, I've done this for many years. On the other hand, there is kind of a funny feeling being told you have to do it, and it's all you can do. The Austin, Texas area is under a lockdown similar to other cities, so I'm at my home. And then Frank, an interesting tidbit that I haven't seen in other locations, not that I'm aware of, is there's also a curfew here, so one cannot be outside between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Without risk of being arrested. So they're getting pretty serious. What's your situation? Working from home? Are you getting out to the grocery store? What's going on in the New York City area?
Well, like you, I'm used to working from a home office, and either a home office or I'm out and about at events or over at vendor sites. And the first thing, of course, is that all of the events that we would be normally attending this year have gone away or gone virtual. So
Yep.
Nobody's going anywhere now. Here in New York, we're, under a, I guess they're calling it a shelter-in-place type order. I mean, we don't have a curfew imposed as of yet like they do for you in Texas. So I don't think there's any risk of being arrested right now. But you're supposed to have a good reason for not being, out and about as opposed to, normal activities. So, for here, it's like either going to, the grocery store to get essentials, going to work if you work in a essential field. Like, for example, my daughter works in the healthcare industry. So, she's over at the emergency clinic that she works at. Both of my sons work, for corporate America. So they're both working from home over VPN connections, and I'm working from home, not going anywhere. And, other than, going out for the essentials of life or to take care of elderly folks, I have my in-laws are in their 90s, and, so we go over and help them out. You're not supposed to be going anywhere. And, the strain of that is really starting to show up in the infrastructure. I'm starting to notice.
Yep.
There's all sorts of reports about, VPN connectivity failing due to bandwidth problems. You and I just saw, firsthand on the GotToMeeting platform that, we have to dial in, that we cannot use the video and audio over TCP/IP. Because of bandwidth charge problems. Even Zoom, which has become like the most popular video meeting platform out there, is sending out press releases that they're struggling to increase their capacity to meet demand. And, I'm hearing from quite a few, MSPs out there about trying to support the work at home folks with, either remote control applications or remote access applications. They're running into a lot of problems with, the platforms crashing and just not being able to deal with the bandwidth.
Yeah. I'll catch that last point that flew by, and then I have a couple questions for you. But on that last point, with the MSPs, rapidly helping customers set up home offices and work remotely. And Frank, I did a piece on it over the weekend. I did some back of the napkin, and I kind of figure it's a multi-year opportunity. There's certainly the surge, but I wrote how I really feel we're changing how work works. this is the overused term paradigm shift coming out of this one. So multi-year opportunity, understood. But what's interesting is Dan Foote, occasional contributor from Anchorage, Alaska, figured, we talked to him a few weeks ago, and he figured, well, he's especially well prepared for this line of work because in November of 18, so what do you want to call that, about 15 months ago, they had the sizable earthquake in Alaska that, had some damage, and people had to be rapidly set up to work from home. And so he kind of felt, he has experience with this and could respond quickly. And I think that's what, Frank, that's going to be, the MSPs are adding a new skill set, right? If this happens again, they'll go, oh, I've seen this. I get it. I know this one. And they'll know to expect the bandwidth challenges and so on. So that's a real thing. Now, question, before we got on this podcast, you were saying that one of your sons is working from home and uses VPN connectivity, but you were saying even that is acting up a little bit with the bandwidth challenges.
Yeah, every 5 to 10 minutes or so, it winds up dropping off on the VPN, which of course makes it difficult to work remotely when all of a sudden you're no longer on the network. Now, I'm hearing about that going on, and a lot of, not just my son experiencing that, but also I'm hearing about a lot of that all over the place, that the traditional VPN infrastructure that's been set up by a lot of these businesses were designed and, provisioned for that occasional remote user. The person out in the field that just needs to get in to, access their, Outlook or something like that. And, you have these businesses out there struggling to, support a 100% work-at-home workforce over their VPNs. And, you run into licensing issues right off the bat. And then also you run into whatever, the processing capabilities are of that VPN appliance. And I see this creating a whole nother opportunity for, those folks in the channel, MSPs, MSSPs, solution providers. And it's the ability to maybe walk away from VPNs and move over to zero trust network access or software-defined perimeters. The type of features that we get when you move into the realm of an SD-WAN.
Yeah.
And I see this being a huge potential for those that want to get involved in those services. And you've got quite a few of the SD-WAN vendors out there, like Cato Networks and a few other folks who are right now pushing their ZTNA or clientless access into the WAN, which brings you onto the provisioned private backbone and incorporates everything like failover and bandwidth shaping and all that, all as part of an SD-WAN. So yep. I think there's a big potential there to transform how, enterprises, small, medium, and large enterprises even connect to the cloud and the internet. And I think that pathway is SD-WAN.
Yeah. That's the thing. You raise a really interesting point. When we go through these geologic epochs or periods of time, there's going to be winners and losers. And, you could argue, for example, a lot of sit-down restaurants, I mean, some of those are never coming back. But they have learned very quickly to shift over to, Uber Eats and Grubhub and different delivery services. So you're going to have winners and losers. And Frank, another area that I've participated in as an adjunct instructor back in the days, early 2000s, we're using Blackboard for online training. Now you have Moodle and some other ones, but I think you're also seeing, and it has already been validated, back in the day, online education is a little goofy, and we were still trying to figure out how to engage with students and so on. But Frank, the sheer shift to online education, my kids' college, that speaks for itself. Not only has it validated that paradigm, it may change brick and mortar. I mean, that, that, Frank, that may be it, or it is we know it.
It's definitely the case when it comes to technology education too. And we've seen, the online type of education resources and certification and all that, embracing this kind of virtual classroom. And I think a lot of the lessons that have been learned there are being applied to traditional education. But on the flip side, you now have, companies like Skillsoft and Workfront, and these folks in the certification and education business embracing this online instruction methodology, which I think is what we're going to start seeing happen on the technical and engineering side of things as well. And they're also at this point in time with so many folks, working from home or even being furloughed and whatnot, they're turning back to educational resources to, update their skill sets. I've got a friend of mine who's furloughed, and that's what he's doing. He's diving back into cybersecurity education. And and I think, the potential there is I think we are going to see a huge fallout, a huge turnover once this is over as well when it comes to technology people, because there's so many enterprises out there that are just failing to meet the basic needs of connectivity that I think there's going to be mass firing going on and new blood coming into a lot of those businesses. And in another respect, I think that could spell out a lot of opportunity for MSPs. You approach, a medium enterprise that became very dissatisfied with their IT's ability to respond to something like this, and they might be willing to go the MSP route instead of, rebuilding their internal IT. So I think we're, on the cusp of a lot of changes across a lot of industries because of COVID-19.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. I'll start to wrap on this. So yesterday, literally, I'm looking at it on the screen on LinkedIn. Jay McBain dropped a piece. So if you go look up Jay McBain on LinkedIn, 23 hours ago, he dropped a piece about read my take on the coronavirus impact on the channel. Forrester's been talking to customers, vendors, blah, 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 understanding the potential impacts of the scenarios outlined by the CDC. Jay goes on to say, and I have not read the article, Frank, I will do so, but he ends his tease with, could we lose a quarter of all channel partners like we did in 2008? So I will most certainly read this, but the question is valid, Frank, that we did, I saw the numbers. I would offer my NDAs with Microsoft have expired from that era. But I saw the numbers in the Microsoft Partner Program, and Frank, it was not pretty. A combination of 2008, combination of SBS on the downslide, and a combination of the small business specialist community being abruptly pulled. These were not pretty numbers in terms of the people, the contraction in the channel, if that makes sense. And we may see something similar. Who knows?
Yep, I've known Jay for many years, been friends with him for many years, and I often disagree with him on some things, but I think he might be onto something there. But there's also, this other, maybe perhaps a silver lining to this is that if you look at a lot of vendors out there, the vendors themselves are being faced with the whole, having people work from home, including their sales force. Vendors might start looking to switch back to a more channel-centric way of having their products delivered instead of keeping an internal sales force. So there might be an opportunity from that angle for the channel where, we go back to 2008, it was purely an economic, downturn, a recession in that case. Now, what we're facing here is another potential recession, but it's being driven by, this public health concern, which change. It's not just, all right, we got to, cut things to the basics. We have to look at maybe how we're going to conduct business in the future.
Yeah.
And in that self, when there's a lot of disparity in how things are going to be done, there's the potential for opportunity. So, you can be pessimistic or optimistic about it.
Right. Yeah. Is TCAT, one of our speakers a few years ago? I don't know if you had the pleasure of meeting TCAT, his actual first name. And he would often start his speeches using a Wall Street phrase that bears get rich, bulls get rich, and pigs get fat. So, there's going to be upside opportunity on both sides of the aisle, right? The recovery, but also the disruption and the changes that go on. But doing nothing is not an option, Frank. And I'll start to leave it at that, my friend.
I just want to throw one other thing out there is that, the vendors that currently work with the channel are really, upping their game to try and help the MSPs. Let's talk about, our friend Atera real quickly. Atera, which is an RMM ITSM solution, and I'm actually writing a nice long article about them, looking at their product, which will go over in eWeek. They just introduced the capability to allow MSPs to provide their customers with remote control software by flipping a switch so that people can work from home on their internal, their PCs that are located on their desks. And they're making it very easy, and they're making it moderated by the MSP so that for, I think it's $5 a month, they have access to moderated and controlled splash top to do remote control.
Yep.
So, it's completely reinventing the BYOD market because of that. So what I would say for MSPs out there is kind of look to your vendors, the folks that you're partnered with, to see what they're doing to help you, because you might be able to find opportunity that way.
Yeah. No, excellent. Well, Frank, keep washing your hands, and when we talk to you in a month, most assuredly we will have new things to talk about. Things are very dynamic right now, so have a happy Easter and early spring, and we'll talk to you in a month.
You too, Harry. Take care.
All right.